My grandfather always warned, there's a family secret you'll discover one day. I thought it was just a story until I found an old diary in the attic. I opened it and started reading. The first page alone made my stomach drop. I ran downstairs, holding the book, and yelled, "Why did no one tell me this?" My mother snatched it from my hands, flipped through the pages, and burst into tears. My father sighed, because we were never supposed to know. My grandfather always told me, there's a family secret you'll discover one day. I thought it was just one of his stories until I found an old diary in the attic. I opened it and started reading. The first page alone made my stomach drop. I ran downstairs, holding the book, and yelled, "Why did no one tell me this?" My mother snatched it from my hands, flipped through the pages, and burst into tears. My father sighed, because we were never supposed to know. It was a rainy afternoon in our old family home in Charleston, South Carolina. I was helping my parents clean out the attic when I stumbled upon a dusty, leather-bound diary hidden beneath a loose floorboard. Curious, I opened it. The first page read, June 12, 1953. Today, I did something unforgivable. I buried the truth, but I fear it will resurface. My heart raced. The handwriting was unmistakably my grandfather's. I rushed downstairs, diary in hand, and confronted my parents. My mother turned pale, recognizing the diary. She flipped through the pages, tears streaming down her face. My father looked away, his expression a mix of shame and sorrow. "Why did no one tell me this?" I demanded. "Because we were never supposed to know," my father replied. Over the next few days, I read the diary in its entirety. It revealed that my grandfather had a secret family, a wife and child he abandoned before marrying my grandmother. The child, my half-uncle, was left in an orphanage and never heard from again. The diary detailed my grandfather's guilt and his failed attempts to locate his son. He feared the truth would destroy our family, so he kept it hidden. Determined to uncover the truth, I began researching orphanage records and public archives. After weeks of searching, I found a lead, a man named Thomas, born in 1950, matching the details in the diary. I reached out to Thomas, explaining our possible connection. Skeptical but curious, he agreed to meet. Meeting Thomas was surreal. He bore a striking resemblance to my grandfather. We talked for hours, sharing stories and comparing notes. A DNA test confirmed our relation. He was indeed my uncle. Thomas had lived a hard life, bouncing between foster homes and struggling to find his place. Learning about his true heritage brought him a sense of closure. Introducing Thomas to the family was met with mixed emotions. Some welcomed him with open arms, while others felt betrayed by the revelation. My mother struggled the most, grappling with the idea that her father had kept such a significant secret. Over time, however, the family began to accept Thomas, recognizing that he was a victim of circumstances beyond his control. The discovery of the diary and the subsequent reunion with Thomas forced us to reevaluate our family's history. It taught us that secrets, no matter how deeply buried, have a way of surfacing. While the truth was painful, it also brought healing and a newfound sense of unity. A few months after Thomas became part of the family, something strange happened. We were cleaning out the old fireplace in the family room, getting ready to install a new wood stove. I reached up into the chimney ledge and felt something stuck behind a loose brick. It was a thick, yellowed envelope, sealed with wax and brittle at the corners. I pulled it out, and everyone went quiet as I held it up. Written in fading ink were the words, "To be opened only by my true blood." My hand shook. I looked around. My father nodded slowly. "That's your right now." Inside was a stack of letters and a black and white photograph of a man in military uniform, my grandfather. But next to him, smiling in the photo, was a man who looked exactly like Thomas. "Who is that?" I asked, turning the photo over. On the back, Camp Peary, Virginia. August 1952. My brother, Martin. Wait, my grandfather had a brother? I dove back into the attic. There had to be more. I found another box, tucked inside an old trunk full of faded clothes. Inside were military records, some handwritten notes, and a journal labeled M. It wasn't just any journal. It was Martin's. Turns out, my grandfather had more than one secret. His brother Martin had been involved with intelligence work in the early Cold War years. There were notes about Project Swallowtail, names and addresses, and coded letters. My skin crawled. This wasn't just family drama. This was government-level mystery. And then I read the final entry. I told Robert, my grandfather, to destroy the evidence. If he didn't, everything could fall apart. After that day, weird things started happening. One night, I noticed a black SUV parked across from our house. Always the same car. The same two men inside, just watching. Thomas was the first to say it. They're here because of the letters. My dad got nervous. He told us to stop digging. This goes deeper than family, he warned. Let sleeping dogs lie. But I couldn't. I scanned every page of Martin's journal and uploaded it to a secure folder. If anything happened to me, at least someone would know. Thomas and I followed one of the addresses listed in Martin's journal, an old hunting cabin deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. It was run down and smelled like mold, but inside we found a locked steel box buried beneath the floorboards. With a crowbar, Thomas pried it open. Inside? Photographs. Lots of them. People in military gear. Men being dragged into vans. One photo showed my grandfather and Martin in front of a building with a CIA emblem. Another photo, chilling, was of a younger man, bound to a chair, eyes blindfolded. The words scrawled on the back, Langley, 1955. Subject, H.A. Who the hell was H.A.? When we returned home, my mother was pacing the living room. They came, she whispered. They were here asking about Thomas. About you. We weren't safe. The next morning, we found the attic ransacked. Whoever they were looking for the rest of the files. And then Thomas vanished. One moment, he was there. Next, gone. No calls. No texts. His phone disconnected. A week later, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photo of Thomas, tied to a chair. Just like the HA photo. The message written in red ink. Stop digging or lose him. I couldn't stop now. I reached out to a friend of mine who worked in cybersecurity. We cracked into an old military database using information from Martin's files. What we found was horrifying. Project Swallowtail had been a covert operation involving human testing with mind control experiments during the Cold War. And Martin, my great-uncle, was one of its architects. Worse, Subject HA, that was Thomas. Somehow, Thomas had been taken in by the military as a child, experimented on, and his memories wiped. My grandfather helped cover it up when he left him at the orphanage. He didn't just abandon his son. He erased him. I felt sick. The man I'd just welcomed into our family, my uncle, had been used as a human pawn. And now he was gone again, snatched back by the same shadows that ruined his childhood. I went to the local news. I gave them a redacted version of the diary, of the photos. But the story never aired. I received a cease and desist letter the next day from a law firm in Washington, D.C. We were up against something bigger than us. There was one name that kept appearing in both journals, Martin's and my grandfather's. A name I had never heard before. Victor Langford. I did some digging. He was a former intelligence officer turned private consultant. Still alive. Living under a new name in Asheville, North Carolina. I packed a bag. No one could stop me now. Victor Langford was in his late 80s. His hands trembled, but his eyes were sharp. He knew who I was the moment I walked into the room. I wondered how long it would take one of you to come, he said. He didn't deny anything. In fact, he told me more. Project Swallowtail wasn't shut down. It just changed names. Changed faces. Thomas was valuable. Too valuable to be left with your family. When I asked where he was, Victor looked at me long and hard. You don't want to find him. Not like this. But I do. And I will. 2 days after meeting Victor Langford, I started receiving phone calls in the middle of the night. No caller ID. Just static on the line. At first, I thought it was a prank. But the third call was different. A voice, weak, distorted, spoke through the static. They lied. I was never just one of them. They needed me because of what I could do. It was Thomas. My chest tightened. I recorded the call and played it back over and over. I sent it to my cybersecurity friend, Sam. He ran a spectrogram analysis on the background noise and came back with something chilling. There's a digital signature in the static, he said. Like a buried message. Almost like GPS coordinates. We plotted it. A wooded area outside Oak Ridge, Tennessee. That's where they were keeping him. Oak Ridge wasn't just a name from a history book. It used to be one of the secret cities during the Manhattan Project. And apparently, the government never fully left. The compound wasn't listed on any maps. Surrounded by chain-link fences, armed guards, and thick woods, it looked abandoned. until you got close enough to see the infrared cameras and motion sensors. Sam and I posed as utility contractors doing underground cable inspections. We made it past the first checkpoint before we were stopped. That's when everything went sideways. A guard looked straight at me and said, "You look just like him. Your grandfather." I froze. They knew who I was. They pulled us in, interrogated us for hours. No violence, just silence, bright lights, questions. "You were never supposed to find this place," said a man in a gray suit. "We'll be wiping your memory shortly." I laughed bitterly. "Like you wiped Thomas?" The man raised an eyebrow. "So you do know." Pity. But before they could do anything, the power cut out. Screams. Alarms. Chaos. And then, in the dark, I heard Thomas's voice again. This time, not from a phone. From my left. "Run." Thomas had escaped. Somehow, during the blackout, he'd broken free and found us. He didn't look like the man I had met months ago. His hair was longer, his face thinner, but his eyes, they were sharper. He led us through a tunnel under the facility, through a forested ravine, to an abandoned safe house buried under moss and vines. And there were boxes, dozens of them, full of classified files, old reel-to-reel tapes, even a blood-stained lab coat with my grandfather's name stitched in cursive on the pocket. "Robert never wanted this," Thomas said. "He was forced into it. But he kept records. He left it all here in case someone like you came looking." That night, Thomas told me everything. He had been born with a rare condition, one that heightened parts of his brain, allowed him to remember everything, see patterns others couldn't. The government called it temporal enhancement. They tested him, pushed him, broke him. He didn't just lose memories, he had them manipulated. "They planted people in my head," he whispered. "False childhoods. Dreams that weren't mine. I don't know what's real anymore." I asked him why he reached out to me after all these years. "Because you're like him," he said. "Like Robert. You question everything." Then he handed me a sealed letter. "For you. From your grandfather." It was dated the week my grandfather died. If you're reading this, it means the truth has finally surfaced. I only wanted to protect you. All of you. But mistakes, they don't stay buried forever. Thomas was my greatest regret, but not because of what I did. Because of what I didn't do. I couldn't stop them. But you can. Burn the data, or set it free. Just know that either choice comes with a cost. You have my blood. But what you do next is up to your heart. We had all the evidence now. All the dirty details about Project Swallowtail. Names. Locations. Experiments. Photos. Videos. Thomas wanted to leak it. Sam agreed. But I was torn. If we released it, we'd be hunted for the rest of our lives. Families ruined. Old agents reactivated. Some of these people were still out there, some probably in power. If we burned it, it would be like none of it ever happened. But Thomas stopped me. There are others like me. Still locked up. Still being used. We can't just walk away. We uploaded the files to a decentralized server, set on a timed release. 24 hours. That's how long we had to decide. During that day, I got a visit from someone unexpected, an old woman named Eleanor, claiming to be Martin's widow. She'd been in hiding for decades. She told me Martin hadn't died in the 70s like the files said. He was taken out, silenced, for trying to end Swallowtail. She slid a photo across the table. It was Martin. Next to him, a teenage Thomas. Turns out, Martin had found Thomas once before, raised him in secret for a few years, taught him everything he knew. But they were found, separated, erased from each other's minds. "Robert took you in after that," Eleanor said. "He kept you near, until he couldn't anymore." That explained why Thomas never remembered Martin, why he had fragments of childhood that made no sense. He was the weapon, and I was the key. We were down to the last hour. Thomas stared at the countdown on the screen like it was a bomb about to go off. Maybe it was. The data would expose everything. The people who ran the project. The ones who kept it going. The families they tore apart. Even the ones in our own bloodline. I was pacing, heart thudding in my chest. Sam kept refreshing the live tracker, making sure the files were still uploading. I wanted to feel brave. But deep down, I was scared. That night, I took a walk alone. I ended up back at the old family house. The attic still smelled like dust and secrets. I sat on the floorboards where I first found the diary. That's when I realized I wasn't just trying to save Thomas. I was trying to make up for what my grandfather did. What we all ignored. What I almost buried again when I considered burning it all. I wasn't innocent either. I kept pieces hidden. I made copies for myself, in case I needed leverage. But Thomas was willing to die for the truth. And me? I was still choosing. The next morning, the power cut out. We thought it was another storm. It wasn't. They came in fast, black vans, silent rifles, tactical gear. Government or private security, we didn't know. Didn't matter. They grabbed Sam. They shot Thomas. And they came for me. But I had already pressed send. The upload finished seconds before they smashed my laptop. It was out there now. To news outlets, whistleblower sites, encrypted clouds, everywhere. And as they dragged me into a van, I smiled through my tears. They were too late. The world reacted the way the world always does, fast and messy. The media tore into it. Some believed it. Some didn't. Protests erupted. Old names resurfaced. Retired officials were dragged into hearings. Families sued the government. Other victims came forward. The name Swallowtail was trending for weeks, but they never admitted to any of it. The files were fabricated, deep fakes, old war tactics. And yet, there were disappearances, quiet arrests, plane crashes with no black boxes. They erased people in broad daylight. And Thomas? He didn't survive the surgery. I wrote a letter to his grave every year. I told him I was sorry. For hesitating. For almost burning it. For making copies. For trying to save myself when he was already all in. He died for the truth. And I lived in the shadow of it. The government never touched me again. Maybe because I made sure those files were everywhere. Maybe because they wanted me alive to see what it cost. Years later, I visited Langley. I stood outside the gates. Nothing dramatic. Just me, holding a single red file, the only original document I kept. The one that had their signatures. The ones that proved they knew what they did. I dropped it in a mailbox addressed to a senator running for president. One who promised transparency. One who lost his brother in the 60s to a mental facility with no name. One final push. And then, I left. Not to hide, but to wait. They're all gone now. Langford. The man in the suit. The ones who ran the compound. Gone. No headlines. No trials. Just missing. Died in their sleep. Heart attacks. Accidents. One by one. Sometimes I think Thomas came back in the wind. Or maybe someone else picked up where he left off. Sometimes vengeance wears a badge. Sometimes it wears a face like mine. And sometimes it's just a whisper in the dark, saying, "We remember."